All right, today we have a lot of topics to cover. So we'll go ahead and get started. Does everybody know the difference between assigning and delegating? Somebody help me out. Tell me what's the difference.
Assigning is when the manager gives out certain tasks for the day, and delegating is when it's like manager to manager, like they're delegating the responsibility to their supervisors and people like that.
That's close. It's pretty close. Anybody else? The big difference between the two is that with delegation, you get a lot more responsibility. So assigning something could be, I want you to input these names into a database. Delegation may be, I need you to input these names into a database and then contact the patients to let them know X, Y, Z. It's just more responsibility, more power, more authority. Gives a person more autonomy to kind of make their own decisions when they're working. So, delegation seems like it would be an easy task, but everybody doesn't get it right. Why don't they get it right? Perfectionists. They want it to be perfect. They want to be the ones to do the work, right? Or maybe they're afraid, they don't have faith in the employees. They think they're gonna mess up or not perform to the level that they need it to be, right? Or maybe they just really like what they're doing and they're just being selfish and they just want to hoard all the work to themselves because they enjoy doing that task. And they don't want to give it away to anybody else. All reasons, right? Here are a few more. You may not think that that employee is ready. You know, I want Brandy to be able to contact these patients, but I don't know about her telephone skills. I don't know about her etiquette. I don't know if she's ready. Maybe, you know, I gave Michelle the opportunity before and it didn't go well. I don't want to give it to her again, right? She's gonna screw up again. Or maybe they just don't know how to delegate. They have no experience with it, just don't know how to do it. So what are some excuses as to why people don't delegate? What would you say if you were a manager, you didn't want to delegate to anybody? What kind of excuse would you come up to? If I'm your employee and I'm saying, Jennifer, I really want to take on this new project, do you think I can be able to have some involvement in it? What would you say if you didn't want to delegate it to me?
I don't have time.
I don't have time, right?
Yeah.
I don't have time. Because with delegation, while you're giving them authority and power, you still have to oversee to a certain degree to make sure that they're doing everything they need to do, right? The last time I tried it, it didn't work. What about this one? If you want things done right, you have to do them yourself. Sometimes that's true, right? Mm-hmm. So while it's an excuse, it might be true. Why should I delegate it? I can do it faster. Saves time. Or when I try to delegate, the employee says it's not in my job description. We probably need to get rid of them anyway, right? Employees are agreeable to delegate if they believe that they're qualified. If the employee is confident in their work product and their skills, they have no problem with delegation, right? Maybe they've previously had tasks that were delegated to them and they were successful. They may say, I have extra time, you know, I finished my task early, I don't have anything else to do, I have time. Can you delegate something to me so that I can have something to do? Maybe they like the sense of fulfillment or the reward they get from having something delegated to them and they actually did it right. Or maybe they think having tasks delegated to them will improve their chances of promotion or raise or just, you know, increase responsibilities. So what's dumping? I've experienced dumping before and it is not fun. It happens when employees are just overloaded with repetitive work. You may feel like it has nothing to do with your career or what you're supposed to be doing in that professional role. And it's basically just the work that nobody else wants to do. Did anybody ever experience that?
Mm-hmm.
it happens. It's very frustrating too, right? So, they're saying that dumping occurs, or it's seen as dumping, when employees have poor working relationships with their managers and supervisors. Agree or disagree? Possibly, right? Maybe they've been dumped on in the past, and you didn't say anything, so they thought it was okay to dump on you again, right? Maybe they've known others that have resisted and taken the same task. If I give you a task and you're like, oh, I'm not doing that, and then I give it to her, and it's gonna feel like dumping, right? Especially since you didn't agree to do it. Fail to see any personal advantage in carrying out this assignment. How is this improving my skills, or how is this developing me as a professional? Just feels like busy work, right? What about this one? You see the delegator wasting time while you're doing the work. Definitely feels like dumping then, right? Here, file these folders while I sit here and file my nails, right? So as a supervisor, how do you pick what to delegate? You have all these tasks. You're always going to be busy. You're always going to have way too much to do. So it takes a special skill to try to figure out what do you delegate and what do you keep for yourself. So what do you think? Do you delegate the easy tasks? Do you delegate the hard tasks? Do you delegate the tasks that take a long time?
That goes with knowing your employees and what their strong suits is, where they are most effective. Then when you delegate those responsibilities, you know that those tasks are going to get done. You wouldn't give that task to somebody who you know does half of all their work and this doesn't seem to get done. So it would take a manager who knows their employees and what their strong suits are and what their weaknesses are and how effective they are in being productive.
I can agree with that. I think that's a pretty accurate statement. I think it's also important to make sure you look at their reviews. There may have been something in their annual review or performance review that talks about room for improvement, or room to grow, or an area you would like to see them grow in, and just reflect back on that review and see if there's anything in there that may help you with trying to decide what to delegate to them. You may decide to delegate a task that is an area that you'd like to see them grow in, so they can get more familiar with that area and build their skills. But you're right, you definitely have to know who's best at what task, as well as who may need some work and who may need to develop in a certain area. You may want to delegate some tasks to them for that. So what can be delegated? Anything that's technical or non-managerial can be delegated. Any manager task, you don't need to delegate because you're the manager, right? So you don't want to have employees, reprimanding other employees or handling issues when people are coming in late. Those are all manager tasks, right? Doing that could create a lot of trouble that you don't even want to get into. So just make sure that all the tasks that you're delegating are non-managerial. That means if there's any paperwork that you're trying to delegate, make sure it doesn't have any personal information with employees, anything like that. But other than that, you can pretty much delegate anything you want. That's outside of that realm. Along with that, of course, nothing that requires decision making should be delegated, because again, that's a manager task. That includes hiring, like I said, reprimanding, promotion, things of that nature. Even if you're thinking about, transferring someone or switching them to a different department, those are all manager tasks that you shouldn't be trying to delegate. So what is delegated? It's usually task performance, not necessarily responsibility and accountability. Just because I give you a task to do, if it goes wrong, I still have to be accountable for that, right? I mean, you're gonna hold maybe a certain level of accountability, but at the end of the day, if I give you a task and something goes wrong, as a manager, I'm responsible for whatever it is that went wrong. I'm the person that's gonna have to answer to my manager or the president or whoever if they have an issue about what happened, right? So it's important to remember that just because you delegate a task, at the end of the day, you as the manager are still going to be responsible and accountable for whatever, even if it's good. Same thing. If I give you a task, you successfully do it, you know, it's great for the organization, sure, you're going to get, you know, some applause, but they're also going to look at the manager and say, wow, you know, they did a great job at delegating that task. So it goes either way, good or bad. At the end of the day, the manager is still going to be responsible and accountable for what that employee does. So we talked about delegation. Now we need to talk about how we actually do it, how we implement it, right? Well, you said select the right task that goes with the right person. So that's number one. If it's something major, you probably want to get approval or permission. So if it's a delegation task that is something that's totally different or just never been done before, or it's with an employee that is doing something totally different from what they usually do, probably want to just run it by your supervisor or your manager to say, look, you know, I want to delegate this task to this person. What do you think? Just to make sure that they're okay with it and that there isn't anything on the back end that may happen if something goes wrong. Team. If you're operating in a team mode, discuss the change with your team, right? That's pretty obvious. You want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Providing training. It's very important. You can't always delegate tasks to people if they don't, especially if they don't have any skills or experience in that area. You want to make sure they're prepared to be able to successfully take on that delegation. So if I want you to start doing some coding and billing and you've been working in registration, probably want to get you some training first, right? Before I just kind of throw you in there. Whether that be, you know,
like sink or swim.
Whether that be, you know, shadowing somebody or working with a coder, whether that be, you know, taking class or whatever, but whatever it is, you want to make sure that you're setting that person up for success when you're delegating, and that may be, you know, by providing whatever resources or training they need. Agree on an action plan. Especially, again, if this is the first time that you're delegating the task to that person, you do want to sit down, make sure you thoroughly go over everything that they need to do. Make sure you discuss deadlines. Make sure they know what to do if something, if they, you know, get lost or get confused, who to contact. All those types of things should be included in your action plan. And then set up checkpoints. Again, as I said earlier, even though you're delegating, you still want to oversee to a certain degree. So you may say, if you delegate a task and you give them, and it's Monday, and you give them until Friday to finish, you may say, I'm going to check in with them on Wednesday, see how it's going, make sure they're progressing and they don't have any issues. So there's different types of delegation. We have horizontal delegation, and this involves delegating to people over who you may not have any authority over, right? Can anybody give me an example of this? This might be cross departments. So you may delegate a task. If you're working in cardiology, you may delegate a task to imaging, and it happens. I'm trying to think of a more specific example. I can't right now, but that's an example of horizontal delegation. And sometimes it happens because, as we talked about, maybe someone in imaging has more time. Maybe they have the availability to take on the task. Usually when this happens, because you're not working with that person every day, and it's somebody you don't have authority over, you have to kind of be a little persuasive sometimes when you're trying to get them to take on the task, rather than, because you can't just tell them to do it. You don't have any authority over them, right? So you have to really work those interpersonal skills. And it may be, you know, we have, I don't know, 10 patients that we still have to contact today. All my clerks are busy, one clerk is out. Can your clerk in imaging do this? Or something like that.
And volunteers too.
I'm sorry?
Volunteers.
Yeah, right. Then we have reverse delegation, upward, right? This is kind of interesting, and I've had to do this before, and I was nervous. because it involves delegating upward to someone that you report to, right? So imagine how it feels to go tell your boss, yeah, by the way, boss, yeah. It's very, it can be very intimidating. But sometimes you have to do this. Again, like I said, I've had to do this. There may have been a time where I was working on a tight deadline and I had more than one thing to do, and I was trying to prioritize to cater to, maybe one client that was, had a little priority. And I had to go to my boss and be like, I'm juggling all of these things. Can you help me? Can you do this for me while I try to meet this deadline? Mm-hmm. Sometimes they say okay, sometimes they say they don't have time. But I think that it's important to know that this does happen sometimes. And sometimes you just have to be confident enough to go and ask for help or ask for somebody to take this over instead of just trying to do it all yourself, right? But like I said, I was definitely nervous. It wasn't just like, all right, boss, can you just take this? No, I was definitely nervous. But most of the time, they're willing to help because they understand, there's a goal at the end that we're trying to achieve. Hopscotch delegation. This is when your manager bypasses you to delegate a task to someone that reports to you, so one of your employees. What do you guys think about this?
I think that's a bad situation.
It can be kind of dangerous.
Sometimes it makes you mad because you don't know sometimes you don't know what's going on.
Right. It does, allow you to kind of be kept out of the loop.
Yeah.
I can understand why it may happen though. If your manager has something that needs to get done right away and you're busy.
No, he does. They have time to come to you directly and say, hey, this is what needs to get done. I need you to go tell so-and-so to get it done.
So sometimes time is the issue. But again, it is kind of shaky because the perception can be, oh, well, why didn't they, give it to the manager? They don't think they're capable of doing it. And employees may not know everything you have on your plate and realize that you're too busy to do it.
And that's going to be the rumor on the floor.
Right. So that's hopscotch delegation. It does happen sometimes. Hopefully, it's not something you'll have to experience too much. Empowerment. What's the difference between empowerment and delegation? Empowerment, in a sense, is delegation. But empowerment is total delegation. So if I'm delegating a task and the employee is empowered, that means they have basically full responsibility of that task. That means that means that me overseeing them is probably minimal. If we're thinking in terms of a ladder, empowerment would be at the top of the ladder in terms of delegation. And this is what employees want. This is what most employees seek to have, empowerment. Those are the types of things that improve morale and gives them fulfillment on their jobs. So how can we get them to that top step at the ladder? Well, again, back to what you said, Brandy. You have to know each employee's strength, what they're good at, where they excel. You also have to know what they can handle. If you have a really sharp employee and they're able to handle tasks very well, but for whatever reason may not be able to handle authority, they may not be ready. They may not be able to handle empowerment, right? You want to ascertain what preparation each of your employees need, right? Again, we talked about that with training and resources. And you want to make sure that employees know why they're there, what their purpose is. Sure, we all have a job description and we can read it, we know what all the tasks say on the job description, but beyond that, the true reason. We want to make sure that, you know, if it's a clerk, they know that the faster they register patients, the quicker they can be seen, the quicker they can feel better, so that they're not, you know, sitting in the ED, or they're actually in a room where they can lay down and get the drugs they need. So you want to make sure that beyond what the job description says, that they actually know the true purpose of why they do what they do. And I think a lot of times that doesn't happen, and because of that, people just think that, oh, it's just a job. But I think if, you know, custodians knew that keeping the floor clean is going to prevent falls and things like that, then they may look at it as more than just a job. So they need to know the true purpose. Need to delegate activities that involve a little bit of decision making, but again, that's going to be our responsibility. But they can have some tasks that have some decision making and problem solving, right? Some analysis, and then they would of course give that to us for us to make a final decision. But involving them with a little bit of problem solving will probably make them feel a little bit empowered. Make the task more challenging. How many times have you been bored in your job? I'm sure everybody's been bored in one of their jobs, right? So, how can you empower them? If you make it more challenging, they're probably going to get more fulfillment out of it, right? Provide sufficient resources and emphasize commitment over conformity. All right? Spoken communication. This one should be interesting, right? You have to communicate every day as a manager. It's important for us to have communication skills, right? Without communication skills, how can you manage? How can you supervise? You can't. I've seen it happen. I've seen great people that were poor managers because they couldn't communicate. Obviously, with communication comes information sharing. This happens up, down, laterally, right? We need to make sure it's true. This is very important because a lot of times information sharing is rumors, gossip. It's not true. We need to make sure that it's timely and that it's credible, right? What's the informal system? Water cooler, right? The break room, right? That's where the gossip happens. The important thing to note here is that information through the informal system travels very quickly. You ever notice that gossip, you know, one person, you know, starts in the morning, by the end of the day, everybody knows?
It's just like the second grade test, the teacher tells the kid, I have an apple. And by the time it gets to the other side of the room, it's, I have grapes and oranges, you know?
Right. So yeah, informal system moves very fast. Often unreliable though. So we can't look at the grapevine as being totally bad, right? There might be some advantages. Let's see. Again, speed. Information moves very quickly. And the depth of penetration. It reaches everybody, every department. It may be something that happens in orthopedics. By the end of the day, the people in the cafeteria will know, right? It moves fast and it moves throughout. It penetrates everybody. So what that might mean is, if there's some important information, you may need to kind of spread it like gossip. Maybe? No? Okay. For better messages, you have to do a few things. You want to speak with conviction, right? You want to substitute strong responses for weak ones. What happens here when we have a weak response? People will question your authority, right? As a manager, your respect, you may not have much. For better messages, you want to call a difference between people a misunderstanding, right? Rather than a disagreement. Sounds so much better, right? Disagreement sounds like a quarrel, a fight, whereas misunderstanding sounds like a misunderstanding, right? You want to make sure that you say what you can do and not what you cannot do. See the difference? What happens when you talk about what you cannot do?
They stop listening because it's always negative. It's always what I can't.
They stop
can't,
listening.
can't.
Again, it may also cause them to question your authority.
Show you weaknesses.
Right. So both of you guys are right. For better messages, body language. You want to always smile, you know, shake hands with enthusiasm, but at the same time, make sure that you're assertive. And the last thing is important. Why do you want to use people's names?
It lets you draw attention to the certain employees. But if you don't know their name, or you just know their face, or you can't pronounce their name, so you don't call them by their name, it's kind of sort of disrespectful because I work here and you don't even know me.
Right.
So
I definitely think it shows some respect when you can use people's names and pronounce them correctly. So what are some barriers to verbal communication? Obviously, electronic barriers, number one. Semantic barriers and psychological barriers. Every day, we speak in 5 languages, whether you believe it or not. We have English, body language, professional and technical jargon, organizational and bureaucratic talk, and computer speak.
Man, I have problem with that at work because, you know, I got an accent. And this lady gave me so much hard. Well, actually, now she just says, oh, because I actually, I have to take a Spanish test or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh, so you speak Spanish? And then she said, oh, I'm just joking. I was like, yeah, bitch. At least I speak, I'm sorry. I was like, at least I speak 2 languages. How many languages do you speak? You know? That makes me so mad.
Did you say that to her? And
No, I thought about it, but I was like, because my supervisor was there. But it's just, it makes me mad because I got an accent and I can help it, but whatever.
And that happens, you know, in most organizations, there's going to be some type of barrier, whether it's a language barrier or, I mean, it could be 2 people speaking English and still have barriers, whether that be body language.
I see that a lot with doctors. Most of the doctors, they come from different countries and they don't tell anything to them. They probably just talk behind them that they can barely understand them, but they don't tell them in their face. Why do they want to tell me? The next time they're going to say something, I'm going to say, be me.
Just don't say
Yeah, I know.
that.
I'm sorry.
All right, so we got psychological barriers. This might involve name calling or threatening. Exhibit A, using patronizing words or sexist terms, making statements indicative of indifference or apathy. These are all psychological barriers. Blaming, talking down to people. Body language. If I'm folding my arms, am I forming a barrier?
Yeah.
I am, right? So that's an example of just how simple body language might create a barrier. If someone's talking to you and you're looking away, you're not looking at them, those types of things, all barriers. So, weakening your message. You may have to do this in certain situations. Can anybody think of one? If you have, and we talked about this in a few lectures back, you may have an employee that's extra sensitive, right?
oh yeah.
In that situation, you may have to weaken your message a little bit, right?
Right.
So making requests or demands in question form will weaken your message a little bit. Anybody give me an example?
Maybe like when you downplay.
Yeah, well, or if you're asking a question, would you like to come in maybe tomorrow? You know, you're asking a question, even though you may want them to come in today, you just.
Right.
You know,
Or like you said, instead of saying come in at 10, say
Yeah.
can you come in at 10?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Using disclaimers. I don't know if I would do this one, but you can use disclaimers. You can use weak qualifiers, sort of, maybe. tolerating interruptions. I'm not gonna tolerate interruptions. But it's a way that we hear your message.
Doing any of those.
For successful listening, you want to pretend, even if you're not, you want to pretend that you're listening. You may want to practice this at home if you're not good at it. I've had to practice.
I let my fiance talk all the time. I let it go in and out.
But you want to look as though you're listening. You want to sound as though you're listening. How do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
You may want to play off of the last thing that they said, or ask them a question back referring to something that they've said. And you want to provide feedback. Listening is definitely a skill. Everyone does not have it. But skilled listeners make frequent use of supportive responses, right? Kind of just talked about that. They avoid judgmental ones, right? And they listen carefully for underlying feelings. I think that one's key. To be a skilled listener, you have to kind of
Read between the lines.
right, exactly. So let's talk about telephones. We will probably all be using telephones once you're into your jobs at some point, even if you're at the manager level. You want to make sure that your employees have good telephone etiquette, right? What can you do? Call after you get off to see how the telephone etiquette is. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You may get a difference. They may say, oh, well, the manager's gone, so I'm just going to relax. But I think this is a good test to see how your communication skills with your employees are after you leave. Here are a few tips for telephone usage. You want to use a caller's name frequently. Again, we talked about how using the name kind of shows respect. Again, you want to say what you can do and what you cannot do. You want to answer the phone empathetically. That's important. How many times you call somewhere and they've been like, hello, and you're like, no energy. It kind of gives you that's your first experience with that organization. So you want to make sure you're answering the phone well. For outbound calls, you want to make sure you state your business. Small talk can be for later. I hate it sometimes when, I call and there's a customer service rep and they're like, how's the weather? And I'm like, no, let's get to why I called. So save small talk for later. And you always want to end a conversation on a positive note. Make sure you always thank the person for calling. You want to keep the person focused on the reason for the call. A lot of times people will just talk and talk and talk and get off topic and just, you want to make sure you ring them back in and that they stay focused. Personal calls, this should be obvious. You want to make sure you keep those short as possible, and you should be probably just using your breaks to make phone calls. And make sure that the callers know what you're going to do. This should be at the end of your call, just to kind of wrap it up. Okay, so for our conversation, I'll make sure that I contact X, Y, and Z, and I'll contact you back tomorrow. Make sure everybody's on the same page. Phone tag. It's terrible, right? How can you avoid it? Make sure you pick the best time to call. What do you think the best time to call?
Morning.
Morning. What time? Or around what time?
I would say early, like 8.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want to call like 11, 11:30 because it's close to lunchtime. They may have already left for lunch or may be preparing to leave for lunch.
Sometimes they're busy.
So
Yeah,
beginning of the day is pretty good usually.
Or you can call them right after lunch, like
Right.
as soon as they get back.
Right. Or if you've already had a conversation with this person before in the past, at that point try to figure out when's the best time to reach them for the future. That will help. You may want to ask for them to be paged, depending on what type of organization it is that they work in. Maybe there's someone else that can answer your question. See if someone else is available. Leave a message, or when you call, just go straight to voicemail, or send them an email. A lot of times when I call someone, if I don't reach them, I leave a message and I send an email. They're bound to check one. If they don't check their answer machine, they're probably checking their email or vice versa. So, voicemail. I'm very bad about this, changing my greeting. But they say you should change it regularly, and I can understand why. In addition to your name and your organization, you should also state when's the best time for people to call you, right? That would be smart. Or you can substitute a message for a request to be called back. If it's information, you can give them your fax number on your voicemail. This is important too. You can let callers know when you tend to make callbacks. Some people will say, I return calls between 3 to 5 p.m. At least then you let them know when they can be available to receive your call. Why is voicemail good? Force you to be brief. You don't have to be on the phone with someone for 30 minutes because they can't do this on voicemail. Can't get long-winded conversations. It minimizes phone tag. And again, because voicemails are so short, it makes it less likely for there to be anything that's misconstrued. All right, so we're gonna go through written communication quickly. A lot of times, especially with customer satisfaction, written communication will become important because as a manager, you'll have to respond to emails and letters, and you'll have to have the skills, which is important, which is why we write in here, to be able to accurately respond back to them. A letter might be the first contact that someone has with your organization. If someone's sending an inquiry about something, you have to respond back to them. Again, you want to make sure that your writing skills are on point because this may be the first point of contact that they have with your organization, and they're either going to be disappointed or impressed. You want them to be impressed. Letters and memos. What's the difference?
A memo is kind of like a name and a number, and maybe a brief message about what they call for.
So
a letter,
short.
yeah, a letter is more in-depth and personal, or to the point of what you're trying to talk about.
Right. And a memo is also going to be less formal, not as formal as a letter. If you have extensive information, it's better to put in a letter versus a memo. Regardless of what it is, both memos and letters on most occasions are kept documented in some type of way. A lot of times what happens with letters is what? We don't edit it, we just send it out. Who has time to edit, right? We're managers, we don't have time, right? This is an issue though, again, because our letter might be the first point of contact that somebody has with our organization. So this is a case where you may need to delegate. Hey Brandy, I just wrote this letter. Can you please just look over it, edit it to make sure it's run it through spell check or something, right?
Right.
That's a perfect example of something you can delegate. When you're done, can you give it back to me? I'll leave the changes before I send it out, right? So we have this letter we're going to prepare, right? Here are the steps. We want to define the purpose of the message at the beginning. You want to start out with them knowing why you're writing this letter, right? So we'll write the letter, we'll write a rough draft. We'll look at it, edit it, rewrite it. We want to check for anything that's vague or ambiguous, right? Which could be throughout the letter. You want to make sure that everything is clear. And then also check your meaning and your message. You want to make sure there's no negative tone in the letter or anything like that. All steps of preparation. Now, if we have an employee doing the writing or writing the letter, we don't want to return it marked back up, right? That might, affect their confidence level, right? Or they may say, I'm not doing this anymore. Look at this page. I'm not writing any other letters for them, right? So you want to be sure that you don't just mark it up. And, I've been places where I've had my work marked up, and it's not a good feeling at all. Now, what I will say is, I've been other places where I had my work marked up. The supervisor came and sat down with me and went over it, and that made it a little bit better, softened the blow. And that's why it's important to review the document with a person who wrote it.
Can I say it? You don't know how hard writing a letter is until you actually have to write a professional letter.
Yeah.
I had to do that. And that is one of the hardest things that I had to do. I didn't know writing a letter was that hard.
It's difficult.
It took me like 20 times
Yeah.
before I got it right.
It's very difficult, especially if you
And I was
don't have
like, oh my
anything to go
God, I'm
off
just
of.
writing a
It's
letter.
not like personal. You just write down whatever. Like, hey,
and he had to come sit down with
Right.
me and actually, look, this is what I want you, because it was all marked out.
Right. Yeah. It's difficult.
It is
It's
very
It's
difficult.
very difficult. But hopefully,
I learned from
as
it.
managers, you guys will by then have some writing skills that will help you out. Faxes. We don't fax much anymore, right? But for the times that we do, we need to make sure that we're careful with confidential documents because of confidentiality and HIPAA and things like that. I think it's important that what's important is the cover page. You want to make sure that you tell them how many pages is with the fax, who to contact if something's missing. Sometimes I'll get faxes with no cover letter. I have no idea who it's from or what it is. So always be sure to include your cover letter, and don't send irrelevant documents. Faxes are usually already long as it is. So you send all these extra papers, it's just more cumbersome. Email. This is what we use all the time now, right? There's some risk to email, right? Because once you press send,
there ain't no stopping it.
Mhm.
it's gone, right? It's something that basically anyone can access. And the thing about email is a lot of it does get to be non-business material, just conversation, right? Between employees. So how do we control this? Know who your frequent senders are and what they're likely to be sending, right? This one's very important. Use a clear, understandable subject line. This saves so much time, even with students. When they put a clear subject line for me, it saves me so much time because I know what they need instead of having to open it up, read through the whole email to figure it out. If I see the subject line, I already know where to go to provide them with the information they need. So a clear subject line is key. Make sure your employees know the proper purpose of email, right? And how to use it. So we talked a little bit earlier about misunderstandings, right? This happens a lot in emails. People don't go back and look at their emails, they just ramble, they don't edit it. You see lowercase i's and, text-like verbiage in emails, right? I see it all the time, unfortunately.
And professional, you see it?
From students.
Oh.
Yeah. This is why you should edit. Most email programs now have a spell check now also. Spell check button in the composition box. You can just click on that and they'll go through and spell check. Most organizations should have an email policy. Once you take your managerial roles, make sure your organization has one. This will help if you have issues with emails down the road. You can just refer them back to the policy and why they shouldn't have done what they did, because you do have a policy. All right, so career enhancement. We talked about this a little bit earlier about how important writing skills are and written communication is, especially for people, for you or for people you're trying to groom or trying to help them grow in their professional career. It's important that they know that writing and written communication goes hand in hand with career growth, right? And that's it for today. I did it.
You made it. Woo!
see you guys on Thursday.